And we're live. Welcome back to the LOOPcast. Today, I'm actually joined by a fan favorite, Tom McClusky. Are we rebranding away from Tinfoil Tom now, or?
I'm going to have to come up with some other alliterative term.
Okay.
And I don't know if I'm filling in for fan favorite, who is both still celebrating the birth of her child as well as her own birthday today.
Mm-hmm. Birthday wishes
29, I think I last heard.
Yeah. And we also have Josh Mercer with us today. So thanks for coming on, guys. We have a lot of DC talk today, so I'm really excited to have your expertise, Tom. So first off, of course, happy birthday wishes to Erica. No, I got to do my intro. You said I could do it. Happy birthday wishes to Erica. And this show, we're going to be getting into the details of the Hunter Biden trial, basically why you should care. I think there's a lot of fatigue out there, but it really exposes a larger corruption bug within the Biden family. Dirty Jobs legend interview with Riley Gaines getting, quote, too political, and my latest obsession, American cricket. So some ways to help the show. We're live 11 a.m. Eastern time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It'll always be up on audio platforms after. So leave a like on this episode. We appreciate that a lot. Subscribe, and then leave us a review, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So Josh, what did you say you like?
I just want real quick, hey, happy great solemnity of the Sacred Heart in the month of the Sacred Heart. And I decided I put up burp, burp, burp. You know, usually I got the Blessed Mother over here over my shoulder, but
swapped it out today.
Swap it out for the Sacred Heart because it's his day, and I'm wearing red for him. I guess you guys forgot the memo. Wearing red on the Sacred Heart. I mean, just come on, people. Liturgical.
Tom, what's up with that, dude?
I went with a different background today of self-promotion for Catholic vote. So now I feel like I have to go to confession after this.
Yeah, how many we got back there?
You promoting Catholic vote's okay.
We got at least 6 books I'm seeing there on the shelf. It's very popular.
I bought a few to distribute to some of our Catholic friends on Capitol Hill.
Tom, you wrote a chapter, right?
Yes, I did.
What chapter did you write?
On the life after Dobbs.
Cool.
What we should do next.
Okay, cool. So,
the pro life strategy, right?
Go grab that book for sure. And Josh, so you showed the images. I want to show this massive flag from Bavarian Waste in Kentucky. Can we get that video up? This was so cool.
So cool.
Oh, we're going to need to go no volume just because it's a little crazy. You're going to get it was like quite the riser. Look at this flag.
That flag is enormous.
That is like the coolest flag I've ever seen. I want to grab one. So this is Bavarian Waste in Kentucky. That? And they must have had to custom make this or something. But
where there's a will, there's a way. Let me tell you.
Maybe Bishop Strickland isn't using his anymore, so they borrowed it.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, this thing is just massive. How many people around? There's like 30 people around it just holding it. And they got a whole crane. They got to lift it up. But yeah, it's so cool to see. Oh, pray the rosary too by there. It's so cool to see when people do these awesome, epic dedications to the Sacred Heart of Jesus in June. Very appropriate time to do so.
Something tells me the good Lord's going to bless this company. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll be doing
just
pretty
a hunch.
Well.
What do they sell? Because I think I need about 100 of them.
Yeah, seriously.
No, they want your stuff.
They want your trash, right? So I actually, and before we get into the Biden stuff, I got a really phenomenal email, and I responded already. So thank you for sending this in. I'm going to keep the name anonymous because I didn't ask about it per se, but especially in June, a month dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, but also as going on in the secular world, Pride Month, I just want to take the time to thank this person and ask for some prayers. So first off, I said, hey, Tom, Josh, and Eric, just wanted to drop a note and say that I appreciate the Loopcast a lot. I listen to episodes while going to the gym. It kind of makes me feel like a superhero growing stronger in body and spirit. Fires me up. I am an SSA guy who has spent the last couple of years getting closer and closer to the Catholic Church. Lots of credit to daily prayer. Father Mike Schmitz. What?
So just some people might not know SSA. Just help them out.
Sorry. SSA is an acronym for same-sex attracted. And the Loopcast. So you do have SSA/gay folks who listen and who are pro-life, pro-church, and plan to vote Trump this year. Not all of us gays subscribe to the continual adding of colors to the flag or promotion of ideas like there being two genders, more than two genders. When you asked the question recently, that was something like, will you be celebrating Pride or flying a rainbow flag? The answer for me is no. And if asked why, it's because of what one of you said. God loves us so much that he wants more for me. He wants me to be closer to him and continually works to create a better version of me. I am not defined by who I am attracted to, and I'm called to more. I see a lot of gay friends pulling back from Pride Month this year. I'll do my part to promote the false narrative, not promote the false narrative that you can be whatever you want against. And then, sorry, I didn't finish that sentence. Finally, I don't know if you ever get blowback, but I know that some of the things that you say about gays, pride, etc., can be pretty direct, maybe harsh. Indeed, there are often times when I think, dang, going kind of hard on me, or maybe back off the gay bashing a little bit. But within a minute or two, I always come back to the same place. You are telling the truth about God's love, and it's what I need to hear. It may not be easy or what I want to hear, but it is what I need to hear. You cannot love someone unless you are willing to tell the truth to them. Realizing I've been lied to my entire life, I feel like I am seeing a glorious new life ahead, and I am drawn closer to God and his truth. Thank you for doing what you do. Pray for me and know that I am praying for you. So just shout out to this listener. Wow, I don't even... I just really sat with that for a while, and I think doing this show, especially around Pride Month, there's a line that's going to come up again. Riley Gaines used it about leading with charity, leading with grace, and then landing with truth. And it's just good for us to remember on the show that we are speaking to individuals whenever we're talking about critiquing or making light of an ideology that really leads people into sin and leads people into misery. We critique that. It's always about the sin. It's always about the ideology. The individuals that get swept up in it need prayers and are listening and are talking and are real people just like us who struggle with sin in various ways in their own individual ways, but we're all on the same mission, and our price has been paid for by Jesus Christ. And so this is just such a cool reminder for me, and I'm sure there's other people, you guys have people in your lives that deal with same-sex attraction or other sins, and the idea is we never hate the sinner, it's always hate the sin. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you to anyone listening to that. I just want to give that message out to anyone listening during Pride Month or month dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, as we saw in Bavaria.
Yeah, and it just, it's a wonderful, beautiful, letter that was sent in, and obviously our prayers go for him and continue in the fight. I mean, again, it's not like we're singling out any one person or ideology per se. I mean, we all think we are made in God's image, and we all feel like we're called to a life of virtue. I mean, I remember, when Bill Clinton first got in office and he was going to have Jocelyn Elders, right, as Surgeon General, and there's a whole talk about this stuff where she was encouraging children to masturbate, and it's like, it's unseemly. So it's not like it's same-sex attraction. It's like we had a problem with someone pretending that a vice is a virtue, and so that's the problem that we have, because we think it leads to selfishness, thinking inside yourself, and not actually. We don't think it's the route to happiness or holiness. And so that's why we say, there's a better way. It's not out of hatred, it's out of actual love. And that's why we want to emphasize the love of the Sacred Heart this month, because ultimately that's what we're about. We want people to know and love Jesus' divine love for everyone.
Word. Any thoughts, Tom?
It's not just the... Because I remember one of my niece's husbands at his bachelor party, just asked me straight out, "Why do you hate gay people?" And I had to explain to him, it's as Josh was saying, it's not out of hate, and it's out of love. And it's not just our faith that brings us to this. The science also shows these are very dangerous lifestyles. Higher STD rates, higher suicide rates. And I think it's a dangerous lifestyle on top of being what we would call a sinful lifestyle. And I'm glad that this person wrote in, because we need to remember that it is a personal thing. It's the same on the life issue. You never know when you're talking to a woman or a father who might be post-abortive as well, that we like to joke about things, but there are certain things we always need to lead with compassion.
Yeah. And even I saw a clip recently of Chloe Cole, who really famous detransitioner. She did a video where she came out and was open about, yes, I was at a young age sexually abused. And that led to me thinking that I was in the wrong body. I was uncomfortable with puberty. And so she went through these surgeries, and the surgeries have changed her forever. And now she's detransitioned and speaking out on behalf of children, basically to not make the same mistakes. And I think in regards to when it comes to sin, especially sexual sin, almost always there's an element of hurt, abuse, shame, something
Neglect,
like that
something
we
like that,
don't
yeah.
know, that people do not know. And some of the strongest, most the angriest, most vocal often are dealing with real hurt. So I think, Tom, to your point, like when you talk to people, or maybe even someone leads with that, like, hey, why do you hate gay people? Maybe they themselves are dealing with something. So always good to stay even, always good to stay cool. And yeah, I just want people to know too, like I continue to encourage, this is the time to fast. This is the time to pray. This is the time to really support people spiritually that are going through these hard times, in hopes that, and not in hopes, we know that God can heal this kind of thing. Like God's grace 100% can heal this kind of thing. So this is the time to be sacrificial and compassionate and all of this.
All right.
So I just shout out to this guy.
Although feast today because it's the Sacred Heart.
Yeah.
And then go into the
Oh, right. Yeah,
feast
meat
today.
Friday.
Yes.
Go eat a
if
steak.
the walls could eat meat, as Francis would say, right?
Yeah.
But yes, and that's a good thing to celebrate is the Sacred Heart of Jesus. How much the divine love burns, so bright for all of us, that He does love all of us so much that He wants us out of that sin cycle, and so just break free from it. Like all of us have had pernicious sins that we
Still
have
do.
that yes, and that are really hard to break, and it's just like. Just remember, you can lean on, the Sacred Heart and ask Him for, His love, and and you're right. You never know what someone's dealing with, but just anyone who's been maligned, warped, abused, whatever, just think about how much Our Lady, how much pain she endured watching her own son being abused, ridiculed, beaten, and ultimately to die on a tree, naked in total
Wrongfully too,
humiliation.
yeah.
Right,
And
absolutely
innocent.
So, anytime anyone out there is experiencing that kind of pain, I have this weird thing where people come up to me and they just share their pain on stuff. It's kind of wild. I pray for them. So if there's no, I don't know why it happens, but
Is it because you look like Santa?
It's because you look like Santa.
that might be the case.
I knew Tom was waiting behind this screen to let something rip.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, sorry to cut you off there, Josh. I know we gotta be a little quick on the show today.
We got it though.
Yeah, I think we covered it well. Yeah, we gotta have a little bit of a quick show today. So getting into the nitty gritty here, we have the Biden crime family. So at least where I'm at, and I want to talk to Tom, who's kind of in a lot of these details, is I think a lot of people have Hunter Biden fatigue. I know he's on trial for some financial crimes and gun charge crimes. And a lot of people see this kind of like, oh, well, he's not really running for office. He's like the son of the president. How is this really related? What would you say to someone that maybe has taken that narrative?
Well, they are right. It's not about Hunter Biden. It's about what Hunter Biden was doing and who he was doing it for. And he was, what was it, 10% for the big guy. He was making deals with the Ukraine government. He was making deals with other foreign governments, some hostile governments, and pouring millions of dollars into the Biden family. And Joe Biden was personally profiting. A lot of what the laptop showed that Joe Biden was aware of it, or as aware, I guess, the current Joe Biden can be of things. So this is
he's certainly aware of it 5-10 years ago.
Certainly. Yeah. And this is about abuse of power, which kind of the other stuff, the gun charges and the cocaine and drugs that he was using on the laptop, I do feel sympathy there for him, except those are the fluff. It's the texts and the money exchange, I think, that hopefully a new administration will look at.
Well, and you also have to wonder, we send, billions of dollars to the Ukraine, right? And, the leader of the Ukraine just gets tons of this cash. Who's to say he's not handing a briefcase of cash back to the Democrats to take back the... that's my conspiracy theory. I think there's some corruption going on there. That every dollar that America spends is only going to the war effort and only going to aid, for medical stuff or food, and none of that stuff ends up. You don't think 5% of that stuff doesn't end up right back in the Democratic Party? I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked. I'd love to see a full audit of that stuff.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's some in the Republican Party too, where you have some of them who are very adamant supporters of the war, who aren't looking for a solution to the war or a way out.
It's the money train.
That's I hope there's an investigation there, and it is a bipartisan one.
Yeah. I mean, and I hope I'm wrong on this, but even yesterday, like the celebration of D-Day in Normandy, France, you had these, warmonger neocons were like, then this is why we need to support Ukraine. It's like, you can't even let this day be a day where you celebrate these brave men who liberated a continent. You got to make everything is, an opportunity to advance, Ukraine agenda. It's just bizarre to me.
Yeah. And take digs at Trump too. So, but yeah, back on the Ukraine stuff, another big headline from here is that the FBI has now basically had to admit that the laptop was real. I don't know if you guys remember,
right.
before the election, they literally got Facebook to take down stories right before election day. And Twitter.
That was before Elon Musk owned it, yeah.
This is somehow Russian disinformation or whatever. And now, quite literally, under threat of perjury, the FBI has now said, hey, this is real. The contents of it are real. We got this through legitimate means. And another one of the problems was the FBI, there were 50 members of the FBI, I think, Tom, that signed a letter saying that this is indeed Russian propaganda before.
It was 50 former FBI, former defense, who worked for
defense, intelligence, and everyone else.
The swamp. Because they worked under Bush, they worked under Clinton, they worked under Obama, and they all signed an or letters saying, of course, this isn't true. And one thing in American politics, what usually is the biggest crime is the cover-up. I mean, really, that's like with Watergate and everything, and that's here. Talk about another investigation. I mean, the lawyer's going to be very busy, I think, in the next Trump administration, because just what kind of influence did the Biden officials or the Obama officials have over Twitter and Facebook and all, that they would all, except for the New York Post, which then got banned on Twitter.
Yes,
all of them
that?
was lockstep.
I do remember that.
And actually, too, the Never Trumpers like Jonah Goldberg, who some people thought was once a conservative, and he's gone off the deep end with the Dispatch and flushed all that stuff down the toilet. But he was like, "Well, you believe this at face value? That this is really his laptop?" Ho ho ho! He was proven wrong. I just love it again. So
I mean, it was wrong. And what's funny about this trial is it's like you said, Tom. The stuff that's getting the headlines is the crack use, the prostitution. I mean, horrible stuff, right? Just like really eye-grabbing, glossy, clickbait type stuff. But really, I think
Friday in Washington, D.C.
Right. The real reason for the cover-up, though, is the payments, right? It's the foreign influence over America that is contained on this laptop. It's not the crack stuff. As bad as all that is, like there's real evidence of Biden at the highest levels of government using his influence to make himself and his family richer.
Well, two things. Obviously, Joe Biden wants the emphasis on his son's drug use and hookers so that people don't talk about the briefcases of cash going and how he landed his son as an executive at an energy company in Ukraine when, what experiences.
Energy expert Hunter Biden.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. So they're using that. It's helpful for them to, shiny balls so we don't focus on another thing. And this is Mercer's maxim on scandals. Sex scandals are super easy to explain. Oh, you mean he was, with a bunch of prostitutes and he had a bunch of cocaine? Yeah, not that shocking. I mean, people understand the sinfulness of mankind. They get it. But if you're like, well, actually, he got a plum position as an energy executive at a company in Ukraine when he's not qualified at all, and he used that as a way to funnel money from Ukraine to the Biden family, people are like, okay, wait, what? Huh?
Yeah, but Josh, that doesn't apply to both sides of the aisle because unless there's misdemeanors that can be combined to elevate it to a felony, and if you put the right DA there and the right prosecutors there, you can actually get a unanimous charge, 34 felonies against you.
No, actually, see, that proves Mercer Maxim right there, because the Democrats were hoping that this would work, that we could get Donald Trump on a process crime, on a paper book, crime, an accounting crime, okay? And they're saying he's a convicted felon and a jury of his peers in New York. And what did the Democrats expect to happen from this? That somehow the American people would be like, oh my gosh, this is real now. Oh my gosh, Trump is going to go to jail. I guess I can't vote for him. And the poll numbers would just drop like a rock, right? And yet what happened? American people were like, oh, I'm sorry, are you full of crap? Yeah,
no, the opposite happened. He fundraised $400 million.
Yeah, he raised $400 million, but the question was like, that's maybe his diehard supporters. Maybe the polls would tank, but they didn't.
Yeah,
he's actually tied in Virginia, which is a bluish purple state. So and he's still the Quinnipiac is a pretty solid poll, and it's not a conservative by any means.
No,
it's from Erica's neck of the woods in Connecticut, and they put out a poll that just had Trump still leading by 5 points in Georgia after the nose of the jury conviction. So that's my point. It proves that it's too hard to explain. Like, wait a minute, it was a hush payment, and he kind of quote lied about it on his form with the tax thing, and therefore it's not a misdemeanor. He's interfering with the election. Americans are like, what? What did he do? That's
and that's probably why they had Stormy Daniels testify, who had nothing to do with the paperwork or anything like that. So they have this former porn star testify, probably so they'd get better headlines. I think
that's it. They want to try to bring the sex element into it because that's something that people understand.
Speaking of bringing the sex element into it and things that are easy to explain, did you guys see the 20-foot IUD in front of DC's Union Station?
It's just like
I missed it.
We tore down Thomas Jefferson to put this up.
I mean, it's crazy,
Sorry for the vulgarity on YouTube, but I mean,
ancient people had the golden calf, and we have this.
Yeah, I mean, if this falls over, someone's getting crushed. But I'm glad we have Tom on here because there was a vote. It actually fell short in the Senate about a quote right to contraception act, and this feels like
because no one can get contraception in America
exactly.
today.
So Tom, I think this is what is maybe known as a show vote and a distraction. What was this all about, and why was it necessary?
Well, it wasn't necessary, except the Democrats felt it was necessary because the things they don't want to talk about are they don't want to talk about immigration. They don't want to talk about crime. They don't want to talk about inflation. They don't want to talk just basically about the economy right now. They want to talk about where they think they're winning. And that's on the marginal life issues, things like contraception, IVF, things along those lines. And the complicit media, because this bill, we shouldn't call it a contraception bill. If you dive into the bill and actually look at the text, it allows for abortifacients. It allows for it could allow for abortion itself. And then our friends over the American Principles Project actually dug in and found that it would also mandate paying for taxpayer funding of legislation of chemicals that would sterilize children. So this is far from just they can't even get their messaging right. However, of course, the media eats it up, and I guess 20-foot IUDs is one way to get your message across.
But these are people of reason. They don't need statues like the religious people do, right? And then you're like, what? It's like, to me, it just shows that God did make us in his image, and we are not completely secular beings. We are religious. We have this spiritual component to our lives. And so we make statues of the things that we revere. So these people, they revere their sexuality and their promiscuousness. It's bizarre.
Well, it's disgusting and vulgar.
I'm surprised they don't do gold, though. That would have just gone for total biblical, right?
But back to
gold
Tom
color,
was saying
maybe,
before,
even.
This is who's coming for this? I don't understand. Like, this is like a defense against nothing. I don't understand.
Do we have that clip from you found?
Well, just to because especially Senate Republicans, but Republicans tend to have the attention span or be able to message like a parakeet, but they aren't quite as intelligent. They don't know how to stay on message. So a lot of them are falling over themselves talking about contraception, trying to be Democrat light when it comes to IVF. And if we have that,
so scared on these
Marco
issues.
Rubio, for the last year, if not longer, has been hitting it out of the park when talking about these issues.
Yeah, do we have that just now?
restrict access to
Sweet.
contraception. Why not just vote in favor of this bill?
Well, Republicans don't want to restrict access to contraception. Do you know any Republican that wants to restrict access to contraception? If you can name me one, I'll answer your question.
Well, that's what I'm just asking. So,
Well, I'm asking, why do you need a law to address a problem that doesn't exist? But it will
Bingo.
create new problems, which is it supersedes the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. But no one here has been able to point to one single, forget about Republican, politician, elected official in America who's saying, I am going to ban contraception. It's just a ridiculous non-issue. But it's the kind of thing they bring up, for election years. It's cynical, it doesn't work, but they'll do it. And meanwhile, another couple thousand people will illegally enter the country today.
so it's the idea of bringing up the issue, not necessarily bringing up the bill, rather, because you're saying that it's not a non-issue.
Don't tell me you guys
Yeah.
don't get that. Don't tell me you guys don't realize it's a political, of course you do, it's a political thing, but purely, entirely political. But thankfully, Americans are not that, don't fall for that kind of thing, and at the end of the day, they understand that their real problems are not being addressed, and these are real problems.
Now, that is great. Now, of course, some people do fall for this stuff. That's why Democrats do it. I mean, they're counting on a lot of people falling for this stuff. But he's so right that this is a show vote, that the Democrats are pushing for to try to advance it, but there is no widespread threat to contraception in the United States. There's no lawmaker standing up trying to ban it, as Marco Rubio says. And in fact, he says, name me one. Name me somebody. And the reporter couldn't do it. And she's like, oh, well, you're just saying it's like a show vote. Yes.
Yes.
And here's the thing. When Republicans do show votes, the media, the Democratic media, the left-wing communist media call them out every time. Oh, this is just a show vote. You're just doing this, stop the burning of the flag amendment just to win the Bubba vote. It's just a bunch of, you're not actually serious. It's just a show vote. But when Democrats do a show vote, they're like, oh, well, it looks like this is important piece of legislation here. Why are you against it? If you're, it's almost like they have a double standard here, right? It's almost like the left-wing media is lying.
Yeah.
But what drives me crazy is then there's complicit Republicans. In this case, it was Joni Ernst and Susan Collins, of course, always. On IVF, it's Ted Cruz and Katie Britt. That they buy into the other's messaging. And on messaging, Marco Rubio did what, when I talk to politicians all the time, because we talk to them about how to message on these tough issues. Talking about life, talking about same-sex attraction issues, things like that are tough to talk about. And the media just wants you to talk about the tough issues, because if you heard in the middle of his comments, he goes, of course, nobody's trying to ban this. They just don't want to talk about illegal immigration, what's going on at the border. He pivoted. I wish he followed through up more with that, but the reporter was just quick back with more questions. But that's what you got to do. When you're asked a question as a politician, don't answer the question that they asked. Answer the question you want to answer.
Well, right, and that might sound deceiving to some of our listeners, just so you understand. But the fact is, it's not like these are honest referees who are just trying to get to the truth of the matter. They have an agenda. Like, in the 19th century, we used to have newspapers all across the country, and every city had two newspapers. Even the smallest towns had two newspapers. There was a Republican newspaper and a Democratic newspaper, or Whig, or whatever the heck the two parties are at the time. But the idea wasn't that there was just one paper that was going to be objective and tell you the truth. It was always like, well, wait a minute now. This is how we see it. And you know what? I think that was a little bit more honest than the post-Cold War world, post-World War II world. We're like, oh, we're just going to be objective newspaper, and this is the way it is. And we're the referees, and we're going to keep both sides honest. They're the ones that aren't honest. So I don't buy it at all. And so I think we're in a better environment now in the 21st century where I think it's better to have Fox News and MSNBC, and they have different audiences. And you know what? It's, they keep the other side honest.
You're not even talking about like how great social media has been for just keeping people honest. But it reminds me too, like, you want to talk about someone that really led the charge against that, maybe helping people understand. It's Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump was put on a masterclass of calling out the fake news media. You have an agenda, pivoting to what he wants to talk about. And for the longest time, Republicans fell for that trap of like, oh, well, I got to sit and answer the hard questions. Have you ever seen, like, for example, an MSNBC interview with Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden. I mean,
Oh,
in terms of what questions get asked, it's like
softballs.
night and day. It's a total softball. So it's almost like someone finally started treating hostile media outlets like they were hostile. Instead of having to
Right.
pretend like somehow they just had Americans' best interests in heart, it's like, okay, I see through you guys. Like, I've seen how you've treated, and so I'm not going
Right.
to play your game. Take your ball. I'm taking my ball and I'm going away.
They
And it
might
was
have
reasonable
that,
to do so.
They might have that black and white jersey like a referee, but underneath they're wearing the other team's jersey. So just wake up, people. Realize that, like, you know.
Yeah, it's good to know.
This
And
is why
I
the
know-
Loop eventually needs a Capitol Hill correspondent, so we can get somebody up there speaking the truth and asking the right questions.
Good thing we have him on this podcast.
All right, we'll put that on the to-do list.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do to always just, I mean, whenever I'm looking at a story, I'm always perusing all angles. Like, I'll go to the farthest left, I'll go to the farthest right. The one thing we were kind of laughing about before, specifically with the Normandy address, is that in the most charitable way of interpreting this was obvious signs of dementia from the President of the United States on the world stage in Normandy. And it genuinely looked like, I mean, he was trying to sit either too soon or it looked he was pooping his pants. Like, just the fact that we were even saying this is like kind of crazy from the President of the United States. Here's the moment. And it had to get fact checked by Forbes and other outlets, Daily Beast, all the left wings, saying it was taken out of context. He didn't really mean it. And I think, what does this say to me? The fact that it needed to get fact checked is probably a concerning sign. It means that there's probably some truth to what's going on here. I mean, here's another example. Like when Biden did that damning interview with Time, where even Time magazine was like obvious signs of decline during this interview. The interview was all over the place, didn't know what he's talking about. Democrats had to call into Time to basically say, well, but behind closed doors, he's sharper than ever. He's the sharpest of all time. The fact that you had to call and say that to Time magazine probably suggests there's a mental acuity problem, right?
I mean, and
are we
what
doing
is
here?
it with jet lag? Every time he goes to Europe, he seems to poop his pants. Like, he met the Pope, he had to go out in the other room and change his pants, you know? Like,
Gosh, man.
maybe the guy just needs to go to a retirement home, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as we've been fact checked, he might not have been pooping his pants. All I can
Right.
say about that is depends.
Hey-o! Yeah, you remember that for the 96 campaign? Like, you know, they asked Bill Clinton, what do you wear, boxers or briefs? And they asked Bob Dole, and he said, depends, you know.
Oh, man. Okay, we're going to get into the next section right now. We got to keep the show a little tight today. So, Mike Rowe. So, there's something I wanted to bring up with Mike. So, kind of America's dad, famous for dirty jobs. He has a podcast, and he had on Riley Gaines, former guest of the program here. And he had someone that wrote in after this podcast, which phenomenal. Go check out the whole episode if you want to. She's basically just telling her story, similar to what she told to me. And the response to the email, and then he wrote a longer tweet about this general sentiment is it my imagination or have you and your podcast become more political? I enjoyed the interview with Riley Gaines, but was surprised to see you, quote, go there and speak so candidly about such a politically charged topic. And so he wrote a really good response with starting off, hi, yes, it's your imagination. And went into how my favorite was when he was talking about the emperor has no clothes. So I'll just share one line here. We can get into it. As I said during the podcast, Riley Gaines reminds me of the kid in Emperor's New Clothes, the only one in the crowd to point out the obvious fact that the man parading before them was stark naked while the townspeople pretended he wasn't. Just like the townspeople in America who pretended that Leah Thomas was a woman simply because he changed his name and claimed to be one, even when he leapt from ranking of number 462 as Will to number 1 as Leah, the townspeople just couldn't see the difference between him and the woman he so completely and totally dominated. Even when the townspeople saw with their own eyes a telltale bulge in the woman's bathing suit he wore on the podium, they still applauded the emperor's new clothes and congratulated him for this great triumph. These townspeople will not be remembered for their politics, Carol. They'll be remembered for their cowardice, just as Riley Gaines will be remembered for her courage. So a real blowback on some suggestion that somehow he's partisan affiliated or whatever. Just love
That
to
is
see it.
awesome
from Mike.
for him to say that. And I love this idea that you're political if you believe something that everyone believed 20 minutes ago.
Totally. Yeah, and I mean, it applies to a lot we talk about here, you know?
And you'd have to assume, though, that even from the very beginning, he's conservative. I mean, the name of his show was Real Jobs.
Those dirty
Most
jobs.
Democrats would be like, job? What is that? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, but it does feel like we kind of live in a time where, like Josh said, like a lot of people feel like their party has kind of left them. A lot of Democrats especially, but Republicans as well. Like they haven't changed, but their party's changed, and they no longer feel like they live in the country that they used to live in. And therefore, talking about things that have always been true, for example, that men cannot become women, makes you somehow political, and as if that's somehow a bludgeon that can be used against you from not telling the truth or not speaking your mind or not having open conversations with people. And I'm happy to see Mike come out and just spike that nonsense, because I think a lot of people really fall into that, even on a personal level with self-censorship, but for sure in regards to like shows, like hesitancy to bring people on or not want to talk about whatever, even though it's the truth.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, again, it just gets to the point where none of this stuff was controversial, 20 years ago. I mean, we had, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which would be hampered by the Right to Contraception Act that Marco was talking about. That was passed almost unanimously. It was like, 412 to 1 or 2 votes against it, It was the bipartisan consensus for religious freedom. There's a bipartisan consensus that marriage was between a man and woman, that there's 2 sexes, not 50 genders. All this stuff was uncontroversial. And the left, the sexual left, they advanced all of this stuff. And things that used to be in the fever swamps, as my boss says, dreamt of in the faculty lounge at Berkeley, are now mainstream. This idea that AOC or Ilhan Omar are somehow an outlier, when in fact their positions are just a little bit more angry, but they believe, the entire Democratic Party believes the same way. And I'm not saying the Republican Party's flawless. My goodness, Tom and I do battle with Republicans all the time because they're idiots, okay? But the Democratic Party deserves to be wiped out and another party come in its place that isn't this crazy on all things human sexuality. And they have lost it. They've completely lost it. Mutilating 7-year-olds? No, we should not do that.
It's not just because I've been in this a while, and some of the issues that when I first started working on, like human trafficking, fighting pornography, including child pornography, I used to and even the life issue used to work side by side with a number of Democrats and Democratic politicians. I can't name you one pro-life Democrat who, on the federal level, who would work with us. Trafficking now, what we call trafficking, the abuse of usually young children, definitely women, sold into slavery, sold in to be sex slaves. The other side calls it consensual now. Democrats do, and they fight for the rights of women to make the choice, this sort of choice, ignoring the fact that they're all being coerced, if not forced, into it.
Tom,
both parties have definitely degraded, except the Democrats. Cannot explain just over 20 years.
Yeah, Tom, you've been on the Hill for a long time. Was there a specific moment or time for you where you're like, something has really seriously changed?
It was Obamacare. I think Obamacare.
I was thinking the same thing.
Just broke because in the beginning, during the fight, we had I think it was close to 30 Democrats who were fighting alongside us, including a couple in the Senate.
Then it got down to 12, right?
Got down to about 12, and then that got down to 1.
It was literally only Lipinski.
Dan Lipinski. And the others rightfully lost their elections. When I was at Family Research Council, I think we targeted like 20 Democrats who voted for the, and SBA listed the same thing, who voted for Obamacare, and 19 of them lost and 1 of them retired. And we get blamed for running the pro-lifers out of the Democratic Party, but it's like, no. The Democratic Party left the pro-lifers in the dust.
Yeah, and I've never believed that certainly not there's this Democrats for life, they mean well, I guess, but they always put out the stat 40% of Democratic voters are pro-life. Really?
Democrats for life supported Democrats for Life supported Obamacare, and that's something I will always remember when I'm dealing with them. Not only
Well, and
supported
again,
it, but after the fact, they attacked the Catholic bishops for supporting it, for not supporting it.
What?
So, I mean, look, in the UK is going to have elections here soon, like in about a month, and we might see an extinction level event for the Conservative Party in
They deserve it.
in the UK, and they deserve it because they brought in more. They opened the doors. They're like Joe Biden when it comes to the border. Of course, they have a shore, and they let a flood of immigrants come in, and they don't care. And their voters are like, "What the heck?" And so, they're going to get decimated, and the Reform Party is going to take up in their place. I would love to see that happen in the Democratic Party for sane Democrats, if they are out there, to rise up and form a new party, or join those Republicans or whatever. I mean, something. Don't support this party anymore.
So because the DNC seems kind of bought this hook, line, and sinker. So the people that would actually be running serious candidates with well-funded campaigns that have a chance of winning, they're not looking for what you just described. They're looking for the next AOC. They're looking for the next Ilhan Omar.
I know. And in fact, it looks like, that's my point. This idea that
So it'd have to be a new party.
I mean, or they need to suffer so many defeats over the next 15, 20 years that they abandon this view. I just don't know. I mean,
that's kind of the point. Like, they're not losing, though. If anything, they're gaining ground in a lot of places. And maybe that speaks to where we are culturally, but people seem to be supporting these kind of people.
Under Barack Obama, you saw Democrats losing left and right at the state level. And Donald Trump is an anomaly, I think, a necessary anomaly, because we need a reshifting in Washington, D.C., and a reshifting of the Republican Party. So I think it's still possible. And Josh is right. Historically, what happens since the late 1800s, I think like the last third party of any consequence was like the Know Nothings or something like that way back
No,
then.
the Republican Party itself was the third party. That
was the third party, right? And since then, the Republican Party is not the Republican Party of 1860, just like the Democratic Party isn't the Democratic Party of 1810 or whenever they were founded.
Right.
They evolve. They see another party is doing well, so they try to adapt. Like Ross Perot, for at least a brief period, helped make Republicans more fiscally conservative, I think.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to watch. But again, I just kind of get back to the lament that Tom and I both have when we in that Obamacare fight, knowing that any element of a pro-life or, like, let's just say, not crazy Democratic Party, that they exterminated them all. Like I said, Dan Lipinski was the last one left, and then the Death Star, they swooped into the 3rd District of Illinois, and they took him out. We tried to do everything we could to save him, but there's no pro-life Democrats to speak of anymore, and I don't know if that's ever going to change. And
I want to emphasize again on the national level.
Yes,
there are still some on the state level.
Right, but I mean, like the governor of Louisiana a few years back was a pro-life Democrat, and he actually signed a law restricting abortion, which was good. But would John Bel Edwards, would he ever run for president, and would he get any traction amongst Democratic primary voters? No.
Interesting.
Sad.
There is a Louisiana state senator, Katrina Jackson, who authored the law that he signed.
She's awesome.
She is awesome. She has views that Republicans can support, but Democrats certainly could. I'd love to see her run for the House or the Senate as a Democrat, because as I always say, I want to see our issues divide the Democratic Party just as much as they divide the Republican Party.
I love it.
Okay. Well, yeah, we're keeping a tight show today, so we're going to slide into the Twilight Zone. Josh, you're up first.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just, this drives me kind of crazy. Like, okay, so there was a protest, I guess, in New York City, and it was by illegal immigrants. And so they are upset.
What?
They are demanding dignity from a country whose laws they broke. I mean, if that's not Twilight Zone, I don't know what is.
Well, they all descended from the hotel rooms that they're staying in that are paid for by the state. Did you see that
That's
story
right.
about how expensive hotels are now? Because I think a third of hotels in New York City are
Like, what are they complaining about, that they don't get good enough room service? I just don't understand this. Like, you're not paying for the dang rooms. I am. So, like, maybe shut up a little bit.
This seems like a really easy opportunity to just round up and deport. They're all right
Like,
there.
You know, if I had money and time, maybe I would go to their home country and do a protest and yell at them for not giving me money. But,
No,
you know,
I wouldn't,
doesn't seem
because I wouldn't
classy.
leave America. That is so. Yeah, I saw that literally a third of New York City hotels are full of illegal immigration or illegal immigrants, and therefore hotel prices are spiking now
Right. What a shock.
for people who actually are American and want to live in New York City or want to visit.
Yeah, you want to visit the big, you want to visit the Big Apple, and you got to pay
Some
through the
feels
nose
wrong
now.
about that. Some
Maybe
that is
just wait a
crazy.
year when Trump gets in and sends them all home. Then maybe you can get some rooms.
Yeah, but Josh, it would cost $1 trillion. The libertarians said that. Are we willing to pay that? I don't know.
I know they get pencil pusher on that, but
Yeah, right. Oh
Crazy.
my gosh, Tom, any thoughts on that?
It explains when I was driving to work yesterday or into a meeting yesterday in DC, there was a protest as well. And I didn't know what it was about, but it must have been, they had the same flags and all. It must have been the exact same thing.
Interesting.
they missed it more. I knew they did in New York. Maybe they did in DC too. Yeah.
It was much
Classy.
Yeah,
smaller. Here,
well,
we're more about the pride marches.
I mean, the bravado of marching, protesting in a country you entered illegally into, and complaining that they're not treating you nicer enough when they give
Yeah, I
you
think-
free hotel rooms.
I think we need to go more El Salvador. Although it was hard watching. Tucker did an interview with the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, and he's basically just openly talking trash about American decline. Like he said that,
He's not wrong.
and he's not wrong.
We are
which-
declining. Maybe
he's
that'll
not
snap
wrong.
us into doing something.
No, I know it's not wrong. It's like frustrating hearing it because I know he's right. They were talking about the New York Empire State Building was built in a little over a year, like a year and 45 days.
That's right.
And the California Super Speed Railway, I think like 1,000 yards of it was built, and it took $11 billion in 10 years or
Like,
something like that.
yeah.
How long? Like multiple
Yeah.
years, crazy amount of time for something that no one can use. Like you can't. It does. It's literally just the track. We spent $11 billion, and it's been years, and no one can use it. And everyone's laughing about it. I'm like, gosh dang
The
it! I know he's
purpose of
right.
a system is what it does. The purpose of a system is what it does.
And then they asked him, like, how long do you think it would take you to build that? He's like, oh, probably a year, maybe 2. Gosh dang it. We're talking about El Salvador, guys. Like, this is like not a rich country. Okay. Tom, your Twilight Zone.
Well, 20-foot IUDs aren't the only thing that visited DC this week. So did rapper 50 Cent, or as those of us who are friends with him, 50 Cent.
Is it
Except
like
the,
58 cent now with inflation? I mean,
um,
Well,
I-
he said
I-
he's going to be 25 cents if Biden gets into office. It's the taxes.
Well, and that's the Twilight Zone. Is he wasn't here to visit Democrats. He was here to visit Republicans. And it's so weird to see. And 50 Cent is a tall man. He's like 6 foot. Mike Johnson, the current Republican Speaker of the House, is not a tall man.
Short
He's
king.
about my height, maybe even shorter.
Yeah.
And just to see the two of them next to each other. But to add to the Twilight Zone, on top of the Twilight Zone, there's I hate to use the word comedian, Chelsea Handler, was on one of the late night shows. I think Jimmy Kimmel,
Jimmy
and
Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon. I don't mean to sound prejudiced, but all Jimmys look alike to me. But she offered to have sex with 50 Cent. Because
whatever for.
Because he needs to understand that black people need to support Democrats. That nobody's calling her out on this obviously racist statement. I mean, she's basically telling 50 Cent to get back on the plantation, and not to be free thinking. Is just
So wait, a white woman is telling a black man what to
does.
do, and a white woman is telling a black man what to do, and the media is not in an uproar over it.
No.
Right.
So a few details of this. Chelsea Handler and
Wonder
50 Cent, I think, were in a relationship at one time. And so in the past, And the exact quote is, I had to remind him that he was a black person, so he can't vote for Donald Trump. And he said this to Jimmy Fallon, two rich, white, influential media personalities, openly telling black people what they, I was like, I guess tale as old as time, rich, white Democrats telling black people what to do. But yeah, I mean, it is crazy that this is not a bigger story.
It's almost like when they accuse us of racism that they're projecting.
Yeah. That's racism, I think, right?
We need a coffee mug for Josh that just says, they're lying.
Yeah, it's almost like they're lying.
So you can just hold it up.
Yeah, that clip is wild. Can't believe, yeah. 50, they were asking him on the Hill, like, what he was, who does he think that black men identify more with, Biden or Donald Trump? And he said Donald Trump. And she's like, oh, why? He's like, yeah, because we both have RICO charges. Good luck getting to 50 Cent, guys. The media wasn't ready for him. All right. So my Twilight Zone is that I paid attention to cricket. And but anything that the United States is dominating, I'm here for. So the United States has completed the biggest upset in cricket history, potentially, by beating Pakistan at the T20 Cricket World Cup in Dallas, Texas. Now, yes, I watched cricket. It looks super fun. If we have any cricket players that listen to the podcast, let me know. The area I live in has a lot of Indians, and so I see them. They get fired up on cricket, and because India is really good. But imagine, like, I was listening to someone talk about it. It's like Pakistan, their country. Imagine that's the biggest sport in the country. That's all that anyone plays. It's like what soccer is to Brazil. And they got beat by the equivalent of like baseball players in the 40s and 50s that had other jobs.
That doesn't care about the sport.
Exactly. So like the key member of the U.S. team, he's like an Oracle engineer. Like this, he just does this kind of for funsies. And no slight to them because they're on a heater right now. I mean, they just beat arguably one of the best teams in the world. But the United States shouldn't have even qualified. The only reason that they got to play was because they were at their home country. So they got an auto bid. So they shouldn't have been there in the first place. The game went into the match, went into the equivalent of overtime. And the United States won by 5 runs. And like, I'm all for just watching the United States win something. Like the second that they win on the national stage, like the celebration, like guys were like hugging each other, mobbing each other. And like, yeah, throw up the graphic here. This is me. So scroll up on this post or scroll down.
It's still cricket, but that's nice.
It's still cricket, but the caption is Americans cricket is a dumb game. USA wins one match, Americans, and then it's bald eagle with the
Well, I'm still like dressed like that, but it's a dumb game. Right. I mean, the thing is, like, good for them, but I'm still not going to drink tea, and I'm not going to watch cricket, and I don't care.
Yeah, Josh,
At
you don't
least
have
it's
to.
not soccer though.
Josh, okay, this is where we differ.
Soccer's
you don't revel in American greatness. I revel in American greatness.
No. How great can it be to master a sport like cricket? Who cares?
Josh, you got to watch
it. To
it.
defend soccer, Josh, it is a great women's sport. Now,
not for long.
With cricket, the one thing they need to understand, since the Revolutionary War, you challenge us on our home turf, we're going to win.
Dang right.
So regardless of what it is.
Dang right. And I'm watching it. I think basically the version of a strikeout is if you literally peg someone with the ball. Like they get a full running start, they throw it over, and if it hits the person, I think it's like an out or something. So there's pegging involved. There's like, it looks like you can just hit bombs. Like you can just tee off, hit it super far. You can hit it backwards. There's diving catches. Come on, Josh. I think you'd like it more than you think. I'm in on cricket. I might come back with a wicket.
Football, baseball, hockey, soccer, basketball. That's what matters.
Speaking of, did you see the Vikings all white jerseys?
Yeah, I like that. You know what, though? I think I got a little conspiracy theory on that, too, though.
What?
They unveiled it on the 5th day of June so that they could do this all-white jersey and they could be on the profile pic and everything so they could get the rainbow stuff out of the way. So they did the rainbow stuff for 5 days and then New Jersey, check out.
You're just trying to hide the fact that the Vikings were.
I'm not hiding the fact that.
Yes, you are.
They were. No, I'm not hiding.
Yes, you are.
They were way too pro. They were way too pro rainbow. But the point is, I'm saying that someone in their department was thinking with their head. If we do a new uniform on the 5th day of the month, then we can we can do the rainbow stuff for 5 days and then get it off our screens.
You're going politician on me. You're hiding the fact that they were not.
I'm not.
Part of the 11
saying they're being
teams.
Politicians.
They weren't a part of the 11 teams, including the Detroit Lions, go Cats, that did not participate in Pride on any of their socials or anything like that. So just got to say.
I'm
sorry you
agreeing
guys
with
weren't
you.
good enough.
I'm just saying that it was a smart idea for them to have done this little game.
All right, so
agreeing with it.
Josh is very popular and has to do a radio appearance, so I got to finish this up quick. Thank you for joining, guys. If you want to help us out, leave some reviews. Email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. Subscribe, like this episode. Appreciate that a ton. And, of course, pray for us, praying for you. Enjoy the solemnity. Go eat some meat. I see a lot of meat comments here. Awesome. Go eat some meat. Enjoy today. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us. Have a fantastic weekend. We will see you guys on Monday. Peace.